Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So this is ex-medical examiner gets 8 years in opioids for sex case. And I have it entitled Doctor Gets 8 years for Trading Opioids for Sex. And so that's basically what it is. Here's the medical examiner here. This March on the 12th, 2018, a photo was released by Cobb County Police that shows Dr. Joseph L. Burton, pictured here. So Dr. Joseph L. Burton is pictured here. Okay, so in Marietta, GA, I believe it's Georgia. Yeah, Burton has been indicted along with 7 other individuals by federal grand jury on charges of illegal distribution of opioid painkillers and other drugs in Atlanta. So Burton is to be sentenced on Wednesday, August 29th, 2018, Cobb County Police. So Atlanta, AP, a highly regarded former Georgia medical examiner, has been sentenced to 7 years in prison for trading opioid prescription drugs for sex in what former colleagues say is a sad and shocking turn for a man they knew as an ethical and dedicated public servant. A forensic pathologist and former medical examiner, Joseph Burton, age 73, handled cases from 7 metro Atlanta counties, including some of the region's most high-profile murders. So Burton and 7 others were indicted on conspiracy charges in February. Prosecutors say Burton, who had a medical expert consulting business but didn't see patients, wrote more than 1,500 prescriptions from July 2015 to August 2017 without legitimate medical purpose. Burton wrote many of the prescriptions to women in exchange for sexual favors, and he was aware that many of the receipts sold, or the recipients, they sold and bartered the prescriptions and pills, prosecutors say. So once he knew that the Drug Enforcement Administration was investigating him, he tried to falsify the records, prosecutors said. So Burton pleaded guilty in May to conspiracy to illegally distributing drugs. Prosecutors had asked U.S. District Judge Eleanor Ross for a 14-year sentence, while Burton's attorney asked for less than 4 years. So Ross, who previously served as a homicide prosecutor, said that she has great respect and appreciation for the work that the medical examiners do, but she said she took into account Burton's health and his past work in giving him a sentence below the guidelines. So Burton's stunning fall is largely the result of a massive stroke he suffered in 2010 that damaged his brain and frontal lobe, his lawyer, Buddy Parker, said. A doctor's report submitted to the court says that Burton suffers from mild vascular neurocognitive disorder, impairing his executive functions, which include taking the time to think before acting and resisting temptations and staying focused. So although he knew what he was doing was wrong, he couldn't control his behavior, Parker wrote in a court filing. So Burton's moral compass has been destroyed by cardiovascular disease. So Burton briefly addressed the court before he was sentenced, apologizing and saying he doesn't know why he did what he did. I failed everybody, including myself, he said. Prosecutors argued that his continued professional activity following the stroke contradicted his claims of reduced mental capacity. So he continued to practice as a forensic pathologist, owning and operating his own business and testifying on complex matters in hundreds of cases, prosecutors said. He billed $45,000 per case and $500 an hour for his services. So Parker submitted a dozen character letters written by former district attorneys, defense attorneys, and others who worked with Burton. They described him as a brilliant and fair and professional, with many saying he was amongst the best expert witness they'd ever encountered. Prosecutor John De Genova argued that all of those people knew him in a limited professional capacity years ago. So Burton, he said, thought that his reputation, his stature, and his intellect would keep him from having to deal with the consequences. So Parker argued that Burton's past contributions mattered and noted that Burton's behavior had already cost him everything. So he's lost a medical license. He's lost his practice, and he's lost his reputation as one of the greatest pathologists in the country, Parker said. So one of his greatest contributions was the recognition and diagnosis of the shaken baby syndrome, work that led to laws in Georgia and other states that required autopsies whenever there is no obvious cause of death for a child. Former DeKalb County District Attorney J. Tom Morgan wrote in a letter. So Gwinnett County District Attorney Danny Porter recalled that Burton's testimony and expertise helped secure and convict Charles Thomas White III, even though nobody had been found. So Burton's walk through the workup of the crime scene was integral to convincing the jury that the victim was dead and had died at the scene, Porter wrote. Burton also worked on an infamous Atlanta child murders case investigating the killings of Black boys and young men from 1979 to 1981. So some of the letters described a string of tragedies: the 1987 stabbing death of his only son, his stroke, and a serious automobile accident that took a tremendous toll on him and diminished state. Some recalled recent interactions that left them surprised and saddened at his diminished state. So most of the letters, or the letter writers, said that they were unable to reconcile the man that they knew had the behavior that landed him in court. Burton pleaded guilty in July to similar charges in Cobb County and still faces charges in Cherokee County. So that's pretty much the article right there. So this guy has a really interesting history, and he contributed a lot in his life, but when his health deteriorated, they said that was an indicator as to why he was doing some of the things that he was doing. Some people may not want to accept it. They may be angered and feel like he might have taken advantage of a situation because he had status. And so what is your thoughts on this? Because there are a lot of cases that are coming out now about different people that are involved in, sex scandals. And a lot of these people, they have powerful histories, or they have powerful support, and they have maybe a lot of fame, or they have a lot of fortune, or they have a lot of representation. And in this case, this guy, he actually was the one that created that law for the shaken baby syndrome. And so this really is sad in one way, and then in the other, it makes you like cringe, because you're thinking, wow, this guy, he was giving opioids to women who were probably on drugs and vulnerable in exchange for sexual favors. And so it just goes to show, even with people who have like a real good background. You know, somewhere along the line something goes wrong, or they use that as an advantage to do things that probably the average Joe, if he was doing this, what would they have done to him? Or better yet, maybe change the nationality of him, or the culture of this guy. What would he get? Would he get pardon? Would he get 8 years because of his so-called condition, because of the stroke? And so I know what people were thinking. Some are thinking, well, he just had a bad break and he had some health issues that made bad, and he made bad choices. Then others may say, oh, he's a white guy, and so he got a break even though he had health issues, and that's no excuse for the behavior that is carried out on these innocent women. And so, you know, asking them for sexual favors, and in turn giving them opioids and keeping people drugged up. And already we have like a whole mess load of articles about how opioids are a big, huge problem in the country. Um, all over America, you know, there's huge opioid crisis. And so for him to do this, it might not sit well with the general population of people, especially if they have loved ones that are addicted to opioids or have died from this drug as a result. So, well, it's a sad situation, but true. This is by Kate Brumback, Associated Press. Thanks for listening.